It was the proposal, years in the making, the beautiful ring, the golden sunset in Arizona, the promise of forever that fans had been waiting for. It looked like the perfect climax to a complicated love story. But what if the engagement wasn't about love at all? What if it was about the law? A stunning new theory has emerged from the legal fallout surrounding Roloff Farms, suggesting that Matt Roloff didn't get down on one knee to propose marriage, but to propose a criminal conspiracy. Was the ring just a prop? Was the engagement a desperate, misinformed attempt to stop Corinne Chandler from testifying against him in a court of law? Tonight, we are pulling back the curtain on what insiders are calling the sham wedding plot. We are investigating the terrifying possibility that this relationship was never about romance, but was always about business, protection, and silence. Before we expose the leaked emails and the legal blunders that brought this house of cards crashing down, I need you to do something for me right now. If you want to stay ahead of the mainstream media and get the updates that TLC tries to bury, you need to hit that like button and subscribe to LPBW Update. Turn on your notifications because the story we are breaking today changes everything you thought you knew about Matt and Caryn. Do it now because the truth we are about to reveal is going to shock you. To understand the magnitude of this deception, we have to look past the Instagram photos and the smiling selfies. We have to look at the timeline because in criminal investigations, coincidence is rarely just coincidence. For years, viewers watched the awkward dynamic between Matt, Amy, and Caryn. We watched the farm negotiations stall. We watched the tension rise. But behind the scenes, a much darker game was being played. We have received information suggesting that the timing of Matt's proposal was not dictated by his heart, but by a courier delivering a legal packet to his doorstep. Let's pinpoint the exact date of the engagement announcement. The world saw a happy couple celebrating a milestone. But cross-reference that date with the legal filings from Amy Roloff's legal team regarding the financial investigation into the farm's assets. According to sources close to the litigation, just 48 hours before Matt popped the question, he allegedly received a notice of intent to depose Corinne Chandler. This wasn't just a request for a chat. This was a legal demand for Caryn to sit under oath in front of a court reporter and Amy's aggressive forensic attorneys and answer every single question about the farm's finances, the hidden accounts, and the Nevada LLCs. Imagine the panic that must have set in at that moment. Matt knows what Caryn knows. He knows that if she is put under oath, she faces a binary choice. She can either tell the truth, which would expose their alleged financial schemes and potentially send them both to prison for fraud, or she can lie. But lying under oath is perjury, a felony that carries its own jail time. Matt Roloff, the master strategist, realized he was cornered. He couldn't let Caryn get on that stand. He needed a shield. He needed a way to legally silence her without it looking like obstruction of justice. This is where the theory takes a cynical turn. We believe that in a state of desperation, Matt turned to the internet. He likely Googled a phrase that many people in legal trouble search for: "Can my wife testify against me?" He would have stumbled upon the legal concept known as spousal testimonial privilege. In the American legal system, this is a powerful doctrine. Generally speaking, it prevents the state or a plaintiff from forcing one spouse to testify against the other in criminal and certain civil proceedings. It is designed to protect the sanctity of marriage. To Matt, reading this on a screen late at night, it must have looked like a get-out-of-jail-free card. If Caryn was his wife, she couldn't be forced to talk. She could legally refuse to answer questions about the money, the farm, and the timeline of their relationship. But there was a problem. They weren't married, they were just dating. In Matt's mind, however, he likely calculated that an engagement was the first step toward that protection. He assumed that by putting a ring on her finger, he was initiating a legal status that would grant them some level of immunity or at least delay the deposition until they could tie the knot. This wasn't a romantic gesture. This was a tactical maneuver. The trip to Arizona, the setting, the ring, it was all stagecraft designed to create a narrative of commitment that he hoped would hold up in court. But here is where the plan backfired in the most humiliating way possible. Matt and Caryn, in their arrogance, seemingly assumed they could outsmart the legal system. They believed that the Fiancée label carried the same weight as wife. We have received reports of a leaked email allegedly sent from Matt to his defense attorney shortly after the engagement became official. The tone of the email is described as confident, bordering on smug. It reportedly read something to the effect of, "We are engaged now, so Caryn can plead the fifth on everything regarding our finances," right? That is how it works. She is my future wife. He thought he had won. He thought he had found the ultimate loophole. He believed that by making Caryn his fiancée, he had built a wall around her that Amy's lawyers couldn't breach. He was expecting his lawyer to congratulate him on his quick thinking. Instead, the response he received was brutal, immediate, and devastating. The lawyer didn't mince words. The reply allegedly stated, "Matt, that is not how it works. There is no such thing as fiancé privilege. The law does not recognize an engagement as a legal shield. She is effectively a stranger to you in the eyes of the court until a marriage license is signed and filed. She must testify. This changes nothing." Can you imagine the silence in the room when they read that? The realization that the ring, the photo op, the public declaration of love, it was all legally worthless. They had played their hand too early, and they had played it wrong. They were still exposed. The engagement, designed to be a fortress, was nothing more than a mirage. But by then, the photos were posted, the headlines were running. They couldn't take it back without looking insane. They were trapped in a fake engagement that offered them zero protection, forcing them to pivot to an even riskier strategy. The fallout of this realized error is what drove the next phase of their plan. Since they couldn't use spousal privilege, they had to find another way to hide the money. If the law wouldn't protect Caryn, they had to make sure there was no evidence for her to testify about. This brings us to the financial motive and the commingling of assets, a move that forensic accountants are now tearing apart. Because the engagement failed as a legal shield, it had to succeed as a distraction and a financial vessel. Immediately following the engagement, while the public was distracted by the sparkly ring and the wedding speculation, financial records suggest a flurry of activity in the banking sector. We are talking about the creation of a new joint bank account, specifically titled the M&C Wedding Fund. On the surface, this looks innocent. Every couple saves for their big day. But when you look at the source of the funds flowing into this account, the picture gets incredibly murky. Allegations are swirling that this wasn't a savings account for flowers and catering. It was a laundering vessel. Sources indicate that Matt and Caryn began transferring significant sums of money from the secret Nevada LLCs we discussed in previous videos directly into this wedding fund. Why would they do that? The theory is that they believed they could reclassify these assets by moving the money from a business account, which is subject to strict audit during the farm investigation, into a personal premarital account. They thought they could muddy the waters. They hoped that Amy's lawyers would look at an account labeled Wedding Fund and deem it off limits, thinking it was personal money contributed by family members or savings for a ceremony. They were trying to hide the proceeds of their alleged embezzlement in plain sight, disguised as romance. They thought that no judge would sign a warrant to freeze a wedding fund. It was a psychological play as much as a financial one. Who attacks a wedding? Who seizes money meant for a bride's dress? They were banking on the sentimentality of the court system, but once again, they underestimated the ruthlessness of forensic accounting. This maneuver didn't hide the money, it highlighted it. By moving funds from a suspicious LLC into a new personal account, they created a fresh paper trail. In the world of financial crime, this is known as integration, the attempt to mix dirty money with clean money to make it look legitimate. But because the transfers were large, round numbers, and because they happened immediately after the engagement was announced, the algorithms used by the forensic auditors flagged them almost instantly. Instead of protecting the assets, the wedding fund became the smoking gun. It linked Caryn directly to the money. Before this, Matt could have perhaps claimed that Caryn was just an employee who didn't know the details of the finances. But the moment her name went on that joint account, and the moment she started spending from it, she became a verifiable accomplice. The engagement ring wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was the first link in a chain of evidence that tied her fate to his. They had commingled their assets in a way that made it impossible to separate her from the alleged crimes. And let's look closer at the arrogance of this move. They were so confident that the engagement story would sell that they didn't think anyone would look twice at the money behind it. They were treating the legal system like a reality TV plotline, thinking they could edit the narrative to suit their needs. But courtrooms don't have showrunners, they have statutes. And under the statutes regarding fraud and asset concealment, labeling an account wedding fund doesn't give it immunity. It just gives the prosecutors a clearly labeled folder to open. This financial blunder suggests that the engagement was never intended to result in a marriage, at least not in the traditional sense. It was a frantic attempt to build a bunker. When the fiancé privilege idea failed, they pivoted to marital assets, trying to blend their money so thoroughly that unpicking it would take years. They wanted to create a financial knot so tight that Amy would just give up and settle. But they forgot that in a high-stakes divorce and business dissolution, lawyers get paid by the hour. They are more than happy to spend years unpicking that knot, especially when they know there is a pot of gold at the center of it. The fake wedding narrative also served another purpose, one that we need to explore to fully understand the depth of this manipulation. It wasn't just about the courts, it was about the court of public opinion. This brings us to the massive public relations ploy that underpinned this entire engagement. Matt and Caryn know how the media works. They know that in the world of reality TV, the audience loves a wedding, but they also love a villain. By getting engaged, they were trying to rewrite their characters. They wanted to pivot from the cheaters who stole the farm to the victims of a bitter ex-wife who won't let them be happy. But the courtroom wasn't the only stage Matt and Caryn were performing on. While their lawyers were scrambling to mitigate the disaster of the failed fiancé privilege strategy, Matt and Caryn turned their attention to the one jury they felt they could still manipulate, the audience. This brings us to the massive, calculated public relations ploy that underpinned this entire engagement. They knew that in the court of public opinion, a wedding is the ultimate distraction. It is a narrative eraser. By announcing their engagement, they were attempting to rewrite their characters in real time. They wanted to pivot the storyline from the accused fraudsters who allegedly stole the farm to the loving couple merely trying to find happiness while being victimized by a bitter ex-wife. They weaponized their romance. The timing of the engagement, coming right amidst the heat of the legal battle, was designed to act as a sympathy shield. They knew that if Amy's lawyers went hard after Caryn, deposing her, seizing her records, dragging her into court, Matt could spin it. He could go on camera and say, "Look at what Amy is doing. She is attacking my fiancé. She is attacking our happiness. She can't let go." It was a brilliant, sinister piece of gaslighting. They used the engagement to paint Amy as the villain, the jealous ex-wife trying to destroy a new marriage before it even began, when in reality, Amy was simply trying to recover the assets that were allegedly stolen from her. This strategy wasn't just about saving face, it was about saving the show, which was their primary source of liquid income. We have to look at the TLC angle. At this point in the saga, the farm drama was becoming repetitive. Viewers were getting tired of the fighting, the ratings were wobbling. Matt is a producer at heart. He knows what sells. He knows that a wedding season is a gold mine. It guarantees renewal. It guarantees specials. It guarantees magazine covers. By proposing, Matt didn't just secure a fiancé. He secured another 2 seasons of Little People, Big World. We believe the engagement was leveraged during contract negotiations with the network. The pitch was simple: keep the cameras rolling, and we will give you a wedding. This provided a convenient B-plot for the editors. Every time the legal reality got too dark, every time a subpoena landed or a forensic accountant flagged a transaction, the show could cut to a scene of Caryn looking at flower arrangements or Matt looking at suit fabrics. It was a wag the dog scenario. They were creating a spectacle to distract from the scandal. They were hoping that if they dazzled the audience with wedding planning, nobody would notice the foreclosure notices and the deposition requests piling up on the kitchen counter. But the most chilling perspective on this sham engagement comes from the person who knew Matt best, Amy Roloff. For years, Amy had been portrayed as the emotional one, the one who couldn't move on. But in light of this new information, her reaction to the engagement takes on a completely different meaning. In her recent tell-all interview, which we analyzed in our previous update, Amy dropped a quote that went largely unnoticed by the mainstream press, but screamed volumes to those of us tracking the legal conspiracy. When asked about Matt and Caryn's engagement, Amy didn't cry. She didn't look sad. She looked disgusted. She stated, "When I saw the engagement, I didn't feel sad. I felt sick. I knew it wasn't real. It was just another business transaction to them." Amy wasn't speaking from a place of jealousy. She was speaking from a place of recognition. She recognized the pattern. She knew Matt's playbook better than anyone. She likely realized instantly that the ring was a prop for the lawyers. She saw the engagement for what it was, a defensive fortification. While the rest of the world was commenting congratulations on Instagram, Amy was likely on the phone with her legal team, warning them that this was a move to hide assets and obstruct the deposition process. She felt sick because she saw the depths to which they were willing to sink, using the sanctity of marriage as a legal loophole. This cynical view helps explain the bizarre lack of chemistry we saw on screen during this period. Go back and watch the footage of the happy couple during the engagement arc. There is a tension there that doesn't fit the narrative. The smiles don't reach their eyes. The discussions about the wedding often devolve into discussions about logistics, money, and timelines. It felt less like 2 people planning a life together and more like 2 business partners planning a merger. That's because, according to our theory, that's exactly what it was. They were 2 co-conspirators binding themselves together so that if the ship went down, they would at least be strapped to the same life raft. The sympathy card they played was essential to their defense strategy. If they could get the public on their side, they could pressure Amy to settle. If the fan base turned on Amy, calling her vindictive for ruining their wedding, she might back off the lawsuit to save her own reputation. It was a high-stakes game of chicken. Matt was betting that Amy cared more about her public image than the money. He was betting that she wouldn't want to be seen as the woman dragging a bride-to-be into a deposition room. He was wrong. Amy didn't blink. But the attempt to manipulate the audience shows just how calculated every single moment of this relationship had become. Furthermore, we have to consider the psychological toll this charade took on the family. The children were dragged into this performance. They were expected to smile for the cameras, to celebrate a union that many of them likely suspected was fraudulent or at least deeply flawed. This created a new fracture in the Roloff family dynamic. You can see it in the eyes of the kids in the later seasons, a sense of exhaustion. They were being asked to participate in a storyline that felt false. They were props in Matt's legal defense strategy just as much as the ring was. And what about the MNC wedding fund we mentioned earlier? The PR strategy provided cover for that too. By talking constantly about an extravagant wedding on the show, they created a justification for the massive amounts of cash moving into that account. If the auditors asked, why did you transfer $50,000 last week? Matt could point to the show and say, we're planning the wedding of the century. We need liquidity for deposits. The TV show provided the alibi for the money laundering. The fictional narrative they were filming gave them cover for the factual crimes they were committing. It was a closed loop of deception where the reality show protected the reality of their fraud. However, the cracks in the facade began to show almost immediately to those who were paying attention. The wedding planning dragged on. Dates were vague. Venues were discussed but never booked. It became the engagement that never ended. Why? Because they couldn't actually get married. If they got married, certain other financial disclosures would become mandatory. Or perhaps deep down, they knew that once the legal threat was over, the utility of the marriage would vanish. The engagement was a holding pattern. It was a status they needed to maintain to keep the spousal privilege myth alive in their own minds and to keep the wedding fund active. This leads us to the darker reality of their day-to-day life during this period. Imagine the stress. They are filming romantic dinner scenes for TLC, pretending to be over the moon, but as soon as the cameras cut, they are likely huddled with lawyers, reviewing the notice of intent to depose. The cognitive dissonance must have been deafening. They were living two lives, the edited, color-corrected life on TV where everything was coming up roses, and the grayscale, terrifying reality of forensic audits and potential indictments. The audience began to sense it. The comment sections on their social media changed. People stopped saying, "You look so happy," and started asking, "Why does this feel forced?" Or, "Why are you buying land when you owe Amy money?" The PR ploy was starting to fail because the legal reality was leaking out. The fake wedding narrative couldn't withstand the pressure of the truth. Matt and Caryn had overestimated their acting abilities and underestimated the intelligence of their audience. They thought they could distract us with a shiny object, but we were looking at the hand holding it. And let's not forget the role of the producers in this. Did TLC know? It is highly probable that the production team knew something was off. You can't film someone for months and not realize they are in the middle of a legal meltdown. But controversy sells. The network likely leaned into the awkwardness. They edited the show to highlight the tension, perhaps unknowingly or knowingly, documenting the unraveling of the conspiracy. The wedding special that never happened became the ghost haunting the series. As the months rolled on and no wedding date was set, the excuse changed. First it was the farm, then it was COVID, then it was family drama. But the real reason was likely found in the email inbox of Matt's attorney. The legal advice had shifted, the engagement hadn't worked as a shield, the wedding fund had been flagged, the PR move hadn't stopped Amy, the walls were closing in, and the engagement, once their greatest asset, was becoming a liability. It was a promise they couldn't keep and a lie they couldn't sustain. This sets the stage for the inevitable collapse. When a relationship is built on a foundation of obstruction of justice rather than affection, it cannot survive the pressure of a federal investigation. The engagement didn't bring them closer, it locked them in a cage together. And as we will see, when the key to that cage, the money, was taken away, the love story evaporated. The fake wedding was about to face its greatest test, the reality of consequences. The house of cards didn't just fall, it was bulldozed. As the legal pressure mounted and the forensic accountants finished connecting the dots between the farm, the Nevada LLCs, and the so-called wedding fund, the engagement effectively ceased to exist. We are now watching the grim final act of the fake wedding narrative, and it is ending exactly how a failed business merger ends, with liquidation and asset seizure. With the legal shield of fiancé privilege debunked and the PR shield of true love shattered by public skepticism, there was no glue left to hold Matt and Caryn together. The romance, which we believe was artificially inflated to serve a tactical purpose, ran out of air the moment the utility of the relationship evaporated. When we look at the timeline following the initial asset freezes we discussed in our last report, the engagement didn't end with a tearful conversation. It ended with a lawyer's phone call. Sources close to the investigation suggest that once the wedding fund was frozen by the courts, the wedding planning stopped instantly. There were no more discussions about venues or guest lists because there was no more money to launder through the event. The wedding had served its purpose as a distraction, but now that the spotlight was searing them, continuing the charade was dangerous. This brings us to the most symbolic and ironic piece of evidence in this entire saga, the engagement ring. We all remember the photos, the massive rock, the flashing lights, the symbol of their forever. But have you noticed that we haven't seen that ring in months? We haven't seen it on social media. We haven't seen it in the paparazzi shots, and we certainly haven't seen it on the show. The question everyone is asking is, where is the ring? Did Caryn throw it at Matt in a fit of rage? Did she pawn it to pay her own legal fees? The answer, according to our insider theory, is much colder and much more bureaucratic. We believe the ring was seized. In high-level financial fraud cases, jewelry is often one of the first assets targeted by bankruptcy trustees and federal agents. If the ring was purchased using funds that can be traced back to the alleged misappropriation of farm assets, specifically if it was bought with money from the Nevada LLCs or the commingled accounts, then legally, that ring does not belong to Caryn. It belongs to the creditors. It belongs to the estate. It belongs in a roundabout way to Amy. Picture the scene. It wasn't a dramatic breakup where the ring is left on the nightstand. It was likely a meeting with a bankruptcy trustee where Caryn was ordered to hand over the jewelry. The symbol of their fake commitment was placed into a plastic evidence bag, tagged with an exhibit number, and locked in a secure vault. It was repossessed to pay back the very woman they conspired to defraud. The irony is Shakespearean. The object Matt bought to seal the conspiracy became the asset used to settle the debt of that conspiracy. With the ring gone and the assets frozen, the relationship stripped down to its naked reality. Without the luxury trips, without the farm control, without the TV wedding special, what was left? According to witnesses, nothing but resentment. We are hearing reports of a silent breakup. They are allegedly technically still together for the cameras, because breaking up now would validate everything the critics said, but behind closed doors, they are living separate lives. The engagement is a zombie. It's walking around, but it's dead. Matt is reportedly blaming Caryn for not being smarter about the banking transfers, and Caryn is allegedly furious that Matt promised her legal protection that didn't exist. They are stuck in a prison of their own making. They can't get married because it would trigger new financial disclosures they can't survive. They can't break up publicly because it would destroy the storyline for the show and admit defeat. So they exist in this limbo of the eternal engagement, a sham that everyone sees through but nobody acknowledges. The fake wedding will never happen, not because they fell out of love, but because the business model failed. This entire saga, the proposal, the legal maneuvering, the wedding fund, the PR spin, reveals the darkest chapter of the Roloff legacy. It wasn't just about greed, it was about the weaponization of love. Matt Roloff took a sacred institution, marriage, and tried to turn it into a tax shelter and a witness protection program. He tried to monetize a proposal. He tried to trick the legal system with a diamond ring. And in the end, he lost it all. He didn't just lose the farm assets. He lost his credibility. He proved to the world and to his family that everything is a transaction. The proposal wasn't a question of, will you marry me? It was a question of, will you help me obstruct justice? It was a recruitment drive for an accomplice. And Caryn, whether blinded by the lifestyle or fully aware of the scheme, signed on the dotted line. Now, they are both paying the price. The sham engagement might be the most cynical and manipulative move in reality TV history. A plot twist so dark that the producers probably wish they could cut it. But reality has a way of making the final edit. So, I have to ask you, the viewer, the jury in this court of public opinion, do you believe for 1 second that they were ever really in love? Or was this a partnership of convenience from day one? Was the ring a symbol of romance, or was it just a retainer fee? Look at the evidence we've laid out. Look at the timeline of the deposition. Look at the leaked emails about spousal privilege. Look at the wedding fund laundering. Does that look like love to you, or does it look like a heist? I want to know your verdict. Go to the comments section right now and type love if you are still buying what Matt is selling, or type lies if you believe the engagement was a scam from the very beginning. Let's get a vote going. I want to see thousands of comments exposing the truth. And listen to me closely. Do not click away yet. The story does not end here. The engagement collapse was just the trigger for an even bigger explosion. We have received word that production on the show was abruptly halted last week. We have sources telling us about a verbal assault on set that was so severe the crew put down their cameras and walked off. The police were called. And it involves a confrontation between Matt and one of his sons that will tear the family apart forever. We have the details, we have the witnesses, and we are compiling the report right now. You need to subscribe. You need to hit that bell icon. You do not want to miss the notification for our next video, because while the engagement was fake, the fight that just happened was very, very real. The cameras kept rolling after the arrests, and we are the only ones with the footage descriptions. This is LPBW Update. We dig deeper, we find the truth, and we don't let them edit the narrative. Type lies in the comments, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next video for the story that TLC is terrified to air.